Strack.
Here.
Weedman.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
LaCroy.
Here.
Mesco.
Here.
Braden. Here.
That's four. Motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So move. Second.
Any questions? Okay.
Mesco.
Aye.
Strack.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
Braden.
Aye.
LaCroy.
Aye.
Motion carries. Public comments. I'm guessing we have several tonight. If you can make sure to sign in on the sheet. And we will limit you to no more than 4 minutes each. So if you could also use a microphone, whichever one is available, I guess. That's fine. So first on the list that I have here is Denise Neufeld.
Hi, I'm Denise Neufeld, and I live in Caroline North, an active adult community here in Grays Lake. I've lived here for going on 11 years in November. I just want to say that by raising the levy, the tax levy, you're pushing people out of the community. I don't know of any young couple with little children that can afford a home in Grays Lake and pay the taxes, and mostly the taxes. So if you raise the levy, and I don't know exactly the number you're going to raise it to, but you're kind of killing the school system. I mean, we went to the high school, and the high school has been down for years, and you've been down for even longer, and it's going to continue. I don't understand what exactly you're doing to entice new young families to come to Grays Lake. Now, we're retirees and we're on fixed incomes. And you're driving us out as well. So who are you going to have left for your tax base? I mean, really. Who are you going to have? I mean, taxes in Avon Township are higher than all of Lake County as it is. I mean, you can go to another township and the taxes are way less. They have just as good of schools, if not better. And Grays Lake keeps increasing their taxes. Like I said, we're all on fixed incomes. We're elderly. We can't afford it. New people can't afford to move in. I don't know. I think you're just losing everybody. I mean, what are you doing to cut back on your own budget? I mean, I worked in industry for years. If I went to my board of directors and I asked for an increase for my budget in my department, I would have to do a cost-benefit analysis and show them exactly why and show them what they would get back and how soon. I never could just go back and say, I want more money. This is just inconceivable to me. I don't understand how this works. And I had some pretty good jobs. I mean, I'm not against education at all. I have my master's in business. I was a VP for Transamerica. I was a director for some big insurance companies. I worked for 40 plus years. And I don't know what your credentials are, but think about it. There's something wrong with the way you're doing things. Because this has been going on for years, and it's just got to stop. You got to rethink how you're doing. Think out of the box, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Bernardoni, if I pronounced that right.
Hi, thank you for having me here, or letting me be here tonight to speak. Happened to read something in April 2018, Forbes magazine, where school enrollment is generally going up, except in 10 states. And of the 10th, the one that it's not going up as bad, it's going down actually, is the state of Illinois. And that was talking about elementary schools and high schools. And I think, if I could get my numbers right here, this school, the elementary school, this district is down probably 25 classrooms in the last few years. So I don't understand why taxes would go up. So the other thing is that your levy, I haven't seen it. It's probably a balloon levy. And I tried to understand what a balloon levy is. So I looked it up. So I'd like to read it to you because I think the people back here should know what a balloon levy is. This means you ask for more money than you actually expect to receive. That way, you wring out every cent of tax money that you are eligible to get based on the value of all the property in the school district and on a tax cap that limits the tax growth to the rate of inflation. Sad to say, the people in District 127 have done the same thing. So, you know, and whose hide is that coming out of? Mine. This lady spoke, if I was doing this when I worked at Robert Bosch, if I came in with a budget like you guys did, they'd throw me out. A couple of years of this, enrollment going down, money going up, give me a break. That doesn't work. And I always get a little angry about the fact that I suspect the administrators in here, the highest paid people, are getting their portion of their pension paid by the taxpayers. I'll just stop with that. You know who you are, and you know if that's true or not. So I'm just going to close with, I think that, I don't know who the administrators are here. I know that you're the superintendent. But I think that if you're putting forth a balloon levy this year, in light of what's going on, you should be ashamed of yourself. And those of you on the board who would vote in favor of that, you should also be ashamed of yourself. It's time to tighten up, go the other direction, quit the damn politics, and get things real so that people will stay in this community.
Thank you. Charles Teeter.
Thank you. I'm sure, as you can tell by my receding hairline and color, that I'm probably from Carillon too, and you'd be correct. Like everybody who's spoken so far, I have, very serious concerns about the level to which real estate taxes are going in the state in general, Avon Township in particular. We moved here in 2016 because I have granddaughters. One was going to school here, one was at the high school, one's now graduated the high school, and the other one's there. So it's not like we're not invested in the school district. Here we are, and we like it very much. We're very happy with the performance and all that sort of thing. That being said, I'm not in a position where I can issue a levy and get my income that I would like to have so that I can pay my added costs. I don't have that flexibility. When taxes go up, expenses for my wife and me go up, our income doesn't, so something's got to suffer somewhere. And it gets progressively harder and harder. As I mentioned at the school board meeting, since we moved here in 2016, we basically paid real estate taxes for 3 years, 2015, 16, and 17. And in those 3 tax years, our real estate taxes have increased 25% in 3 years. Now that's a lot of increase. Part of it is levies, and part of it is what I regard as arbitrary, if not capricious, upgrades in appraised value. Either way, when you combine all that together, we get some pretty substantial increases. There was a lady at the high school who said her taxes in the last 10 years had gone up 59%, and she was getting ready to bail and move out of town. It can't keep going like this. We need young families moving in, bringing kids with them to populate your grade schools, to populate the middle school, and subsequently populate the high schools. And I'm, seriously concerned that that this constant levying over and over and over again and driving for as much as you can squeeze is going to literally squeeze a lot of folks out or prevent new people moving in, as the lady mentioned earlier. So I think it's a grave problem. I would encourage you to look at ways to tighten the belt somewhere along the line. Declining enrollment and increased costs just don't seem to fit. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Morris?
Thank you. I'm here on behalf of the Carolina North residents, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of us here tonight. We lost half of them after the high school board held a public hearing and waited until everybody left and then raised taxes. They didn't even have the guts to do it in front of the public, so it kind of drove our people down. We had 3 more former properties go on sale in the last couple of weeks. We would like you to freeze the levy for a year. There's absolutely no reason you can't do it. For 3 years, we've asked you to do that with declining enrollment. Your enrollment is down 381 students over the last 9 years. That is more decline in enrollment than 4 of your grade schools have students. Just think about that for a moment. You could actually close a school with the amount of students you've lost. And I know the board president said a couple years ago, well, we have to be careful. We can't just do it because of a one-time issue. This is not an anomaly. This is a continuing trend. We just think it's enough is enough. There's 5 reasons you can do this tonight. The average rate of inflation has been 1.25% over the last 4 years. Your levies have gone up 3 times that or more. Overall enrollment's down 381. That's not a one-year anomaly. That's a lot of people. You ought to be able to find economies. The district got an additional $364,154.13 in state aid as part of a deal to reduce property taxes that was supported by our senator and our representative. In fact, we didn't get the property tax relief. Lake County pays the highest property taxes in Illinois, the 21st highest property taxes in the United States for counties. It's squeezing us out. Kenosha's winning. Number 5, with the high taxes between you and the high school, you're 75% of the bill, so you need to be the ones that lead the way. Chicago Tribune, in an editorial August 5th of this year, said the new school funding formula directed school districts for property tax relief. They said, quote, that is if the districts recognize their duty. We're asking you to recognize that duty. We would appreciate it. The balloon levy, where you levy more than you know you're going to get, if you had students in your classroom who said 2 + 2 is 6, I'm just adding 2 in case maybe I'll get extra credit, you would fail that student. Instead, you all cheat. And you're telling the kids, be honest. You know what your budget is. You shouldn't over-levy. It's a way of cheating. Not one student in this school district would be treated properly if they did that. It's a bad example for the kids. It's a bad example for the community. We just would like you to think that when you sit here as a board, you do have an obligation to the students. You have an obligation to the teachers. But you also have an obligation to all of us that live in the community. Your enrollment is down in part, and so is the high school enrollment, down 202 students, because people, families, not just senior citizens, are moving out or not coming into us when the average tax bill runs between $12,000 and $15,000 a year. It's killing folks. You can do something about that tonight instead of just rolling over like the high school board, saying, oh, the devil made me do it. It's the people in Springfield. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's no one else on the list. If anyone else wants to make a comment? Otherwise, it's fine. Can you write your name down?
Watch your stuff.
You in safety all the time.
I know. Oh, and that comes up every time.
Watch the cord on the way back, too.
I'm obviously not from Carolyn Village. I would love it too, because everybody goes to bed probably early. I would love it. But I actually live in West Trail, and I was here last year and spoke, and it's the same thing. I don't understand, coming from an education background, why the taxes continue to get levied here and why the tax rate is so high as it is. And I just heard him say that the enrollment is down again this year, and I'm confused why the board hasn't started to look at other alternatives, closing a school, consolidating with the high school. Other districts in the area have done that. They've done it years ago, a few years ago, when taxes were getting out of control in their areas. There are ways that this can be done that are not going to affect our kids, that are not going to affect our teachers, but are going to have a huge impact on the tax burden for the people who live here. And so there was a meeting last year. I've been either attending the school board meetings or I've been watching them at home if I can't get someone to watch my kids, and it was projected that the enrollment is going to continue to go down. And there was a comment made that maybe in the future we have to look at closing a school. Maybe the future is here and we need to start looking at those things now. And as a taxpayer, as a voter, I expect the board to be proactive on these things. And I don't feel like that's happening at this point. So it's causing a lot of frustration. It's causing frustration between people who are older and don't have kids in the district, but obviously still have a vested interest and want their kids to do well, the kids that are around them. And for those of us who have kids that are starting in the district, I don't want my children coming to a school that's not a great school. And I'm not saying that it's not a great school, but there are things that can be done, because last year when I said something, it was, well, then we can cut gym or we can cut. No, there are other places that can be cut. And as a board, I think as a citizen, we expect you to start being proactive and figuring out ways to do that are not going to hurt us tax-wise.
Thank you. If that's all, then we'll move on. Thank you for your comments. Next we have presentations. The first is for the ECAT.
Okay, my name's Jana Donahue. I am the pre-K coordinator for the Grace Lake School District. I coordinate our pre-K programs as well as the early childhood assessment team. We took that over last year from CEDAW. We have a psychologist on staff, Carlene Holm, who's here with us tonight. We also have occupational therapist, who is Lisa Starzik, and a speech language pathologist, Kathleen Riney, and that makes up our team. Okay, a typical setup for our ECAT evaluations is in a classroom, and we have the parents come in and we talk about that we have it set up to do a play-based assessment. These are children that come to us either from early intervention, which is services that are delivered in the home, and when they turn 3, they then come to us. We also evaluate kids who come to through our screenings. And so during the play-based assessment, the team will talk to the children, kind of follow their lead to get information that they need regarding their development in speech, their fine motor, gross motor skills, as well as concepts and social emotional. Okay, just showing you a few more things in the room.
And ECAT stands for?
early childhood assessment team. Sorry, I thought I said that. I'm a little nervous.
Don't be nervous. That's easy for us to say.
Sometimes the kids will be invited to a table to do some tasks. That helps us see how they transition and how they do with an adult-directed task. Parents can either stay in the room with their child, or they can go to another room and watch a live feed. And that way we can, we also communicate with our laptops. So if the parents are not in the room, someone from the team can type a message to me. I sit with the parents if we're in another room, kind of talk them through what they're seeing, and then we can ask questions back and forth. A lot of the parents do like to be in the room during the evaluation, and that works out well too. It has a benefit for the children to feel more at ease, and also it's easier access if they have questions to get answers. So what we do is we conduct screenings and assessments for children within our district. The referrals come from parents, physicians, early intervention, community therapy clinics, and community preschools. We work closely with the early intervention providers to make a smooth transition for children and families. And we share information about our therapeutic preschool program. And we determine learning needs, write reports, and develop IEPs. So this is data we collected from last school year. We had a total of 113 screening appointments. 67 of those were total full case study evaluations that came to us. We had 24 children we assessed through early intervention, and then the rest were the kids that came from screening, which was 43. And how do we assess? We assess through play and structured tasks, so you could see some of those from the pictures that we shared. We follow the kids' leads. When the parents in the room, they can observe and share information. We take about 2 hours. Sometimes it's a little longer depending on the child and the parent. We want to make sure that they feel comfortable asking all of their questions and having us answer them so they feel comfortable with our process. We combine information from home, from outside providers, and from skills observed during the assessment. What do we assess? We assess their play, their academic skills, their learning behaviors, gross motor skills, fine motor skills, self-help skills, articulation, expressive and receptive language, pragmatics, social skills, emotional regulation, and sensory processing.
Ready? Let's do this. You did so good. How many? Okay, cuenta. Cuenta, ¿cuántos?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Good job. You did 4 blocks. We're going to do, I'm going to make a bridge. Can you make a bridge?
A ver, yo voy a hacer un puente. ¿Tú puedes
Make
hacer
your
un
bridge
puente?
right here. Make it
Yo
look
voy a hacer
just
tu
like
puente
mine.
a ese lado.
Good job. Really nice job.
Muy buen trabajo.
Okay, now watch. I'm going to make a train. Can you make a train that looks just like mine?
Yo voy a hacer un tren. Mira, Mister, ¿puedes hacer un tren igual a ese? Un tren igual.
Does your train look like my train?
¿Tu tren está igual a ese? ¿Está igualito? Oh,
Nice job.
okay.
Good job. Now watch. I'm gonna build a wall.
Joe.
So Gina, while you're waiting with Joe, can you explain why we have to do the ECAT? I mean, it's not just,
Right.
there's a reason behind it.
Right, so part of Child Find, we try to reach as many families as we can, and we have families who go through early intervention. When they turn 27 months, we get a list from the state, and then we get in touch with them. We send them a welcome folder, so they're introduced to our district. I reach out after that, and I introduce myself. I ask them if they have any questions. We invite them to take a tour. We set up our evaluations.
But it's required by the state.
It is required by the state. We want to reach as many children as we can at an early age. The earlier we can give them the support that they need, the more successful they will be in school, and they get the foundational skills needed for when they enter kindergarten. I think so. Okay. One of the things we did at the end of last year was we wanted to get feedback. It was our first year, so we wanted to see how parents and families felt with the process. 100% of the parents responding reported that ECAT created a caring and comfortable environment during the evaluation. And 100% of parents responding reported that ECAT provided an opportunity to ask questions, share concerns, and give information. The nice thing about the room is that in a matter of about 5 minutes, we can take the tables that are used by staff to write reports and turn them into a very nice area to meet with parents. And those parents who aren't able to get a babysitter for their kids, they can bring their kids in, they can play while we meet, and it makes it for a nice environment. 100% of parents responding reported that ECAT provided an accurate reflection of their child's skills and needs. 100% of parents responding reported that they felt included and heard at the initial eligibility IEP meeting by the pre-K team. So I wanted to move next to the early childhood program. I said I was coordinator of ECAT, but I'm also coordinator with the early childhood program. The mission of the integrated early childhood program is to empower all young children to become effective, enthusiastic, and socially competent learners by creating a bond among children, their families, the school, and the community. We provide learning opportunities to enhance the development in all areas to build skills for success in school and in life. Last year, we had a total of 92 students transition out of our pre-K program due to being kindergarten age. 50 of those were early childhood students. Those would be students that had IEPs. 30 were our at-risk students. 7 were speech itinerant students, and 5 were tuition.
When you say 30 at-risk students, you say at-risk, and we're talking about pre-K. Wow. Please tell me some reasons they'd be identified as at-risk.
Sure, there's a list of criteria that the state works with us. We develop some that are unique to our area. Some of those criteria would include economics.
Economics, okay.
Would include a family history of learning challenges, being a single parent, having a parent who's deployed. It could be having another language spoken in the home. It could be a traumatic birth. It could be born too early, low birth weight. It could also be things, trying to go through the list in my head. There's about 30 of them that we have identified. And when we look at those, we weigh those along with our screening results because sometimes they won't score as well in some areas where we would think, so they might have a slight delay. And we combine all those factors, and then we have 40 spots currently for our program. And last year, out of the 40 spots we had, 30 of those moved on to kindergarten. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just curious, is there follow-up 3 years down the road, 4 years, 5, or is that it?
Well, our goal is to follow them all the way through 8th grade
Okay.
to see if they've maintained the gains that they had. I can tell you that we always receive good feedback from our kindergarten teachers because our kids, when they leave, are able to sit, they're able to listen, pay attention, follow through on a task. They know how to hold a pencil, cut with scissors. They have those foundational skills to help them be successful. Okay, our pre-K team is made up of students and parents. Our teachers all have degrees in early childhood. They have early childhood special education. It could be a degree, it could be as a special approval. We have ESL or bilingual endorsements for all of our teachers, and almost all of our teachers also have a master's degree in a related field. We also have program assistants, speech language pathologists. We have an occupational therapist, a social worker, a physical therapist, and a registered nurse that are all part of our team. They aren't always needed for every single child, but everyone works together to make sure the individual needs are met. So I wanted to share some things that I found through the U.S. Department of Education. This was taken from a 2015 report. A robust body of research shows that children who participate in high-quality preschool programs have better health, social, emotional, and cognitive outcomes than those who do not participate. The gains are particularly powerful for children from low-income families and those at risk for academic failure who, on average, start kindergarten 12 to 14 months behind their peers in pre-literacy and language skills. Children who attend high-quality preschool programs are less likely to utilize special education services or be retained in their grade. They're more likely to graduate from high school, go into college, and succeed in their careers than those who have not attended high-quality preschool programs. Pre-K is developing math skills as well as social emotional skills through play. We do have a play-based program. Our curriculum is the Creative Curriculum Framework, and we believe that's a child's work is through their play. Pre-K is developing pre-writing skills by strengthening fine motor through play. Pre-K is building relationships and self-confidence by helping a friend. Our classrooms are all multi-age, so we have kids who start with us as early as age 3, and it can be at any time during the year. So we have kids right now that might not start with us until March or April. And then we also have children who turn 5 in September. So we have a wide range of ages, but it allows the older kids to be peer mentors and allows the little ones to kind of have those peer models to help them find their way in the classroom. Pre-K is learning cooperation by working together. And pre-K is friendship. My favorite picture. So our plans for the future. We want to continue to serve our at-risk population. Our current wait list is 12. That means our 40 spots are filled, and we have 12 who are waiting to get in. We still have 6 more screenings this year. Each screening is about 9 to 10 students. We'd like to expand our tuition program. We'd like to improve our inclusion practices. We'd like to add play groups to support our 0 to 3 families and create a parent advisory council.
Ellen, I want to answer your question about the legals. So we are legally mandated by federal law and Illinois law to not only find our students through a child find process, and that's literally what it's called, all students ages 3 through 5 that may have eligibility for special education services. And through that process, it's mandated we go through a screening process using a research-based tool to do so, and then yield those results yield an evaluation for special education services. We are also equally obligated to provide those services for students who qualify for special education needs. Additionally, the other avenue that we are obligated to provide services for is by the age of 3, students who are coming through the early intervention process through their doctors and other avenues. Those students need to have an evaluation, and the determination whether they qualify for special education needs to be done by their 3rd birthday. So we do have some legal obligations, and we always use research-based practices and assessment tools in making those determinations. So I wanted to make sure. Any questions for Ms. Gianna? Or me? Thank you, guys. Oh, yeah.
Did you say something about you took this program away from CDOL? How did you say that? I can hardly hear you.
I can explain that to the board.
Why would you do that?
We went through a cost structure, as you all know, and shift with CDOL. And they changed their funding structure, and it forced us to have to figure out some new alternatives in how we provide these services that are required for students. Our board decided to do what we believe is not only research-based best practice in providing our own services in-house, but also what is the most fiscally responsible opportunity for us, and that was to create our own team to supplement.
I'm sorry, are you saying CDOL didn't want to do this anymore or couldn't do this anymore?
They shifted their funding structure, which exponentially...
And their funding to you?
I can meet with you afterwards and go over that funding sources.
Did they give their funding to you for this kind of a program?
Not necessarily, no. It's complicated and complex, and I'd love to meet with you if you'd like to and go over that funding structure. But all in all, that exponentially increased, and it was a huge cost to the district, so we were forced to look at other funding sources.
When I was 3 years old, there was nothing like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When I was 5 years old, there was nothing like this. And we all turned out fine.
I understand. Thank you.
I mean, really, this is beyond.
Thank you. If you have any questions or you want to meet afterwards, I'll let you know.
I'll talk to you afterwards.
Perfect. Thanks.
Also, I would like to remind everyone this is a public meeting, but it's not a meeting where the public generally participates. So while we're conducting our board meeting in public, well, I understand. Going forward for the rest of the next presentation in particular, we'll limit it to board questions. Thank you.
Good evening. So to start off tonight, just wanted to start off by mentioning, I know it's been mentioned a couple times by the audience, but I just wanted to clarify tonight's meeting is for informational purposes. Just the idea of to give you, the board members, an opportunity to hear some information, hear some rationale about what we're thinking and why we're thinking it, so that you have time to think about it and process it for our next board meeting, which would then approve a levy. So tonight is just for informational. There's no voting or anything like that tonight. So I wanted to start off in the interest of transparency, and I know with a new board member, I wanted to kind of take a little bit of time to talk about the process and the purpose of the levy for the district. Purpose of the levy, this funds our following year's operating costs as well as the district's outstanding bond and interest obligations. The money that we get from the levy we use in our education fund towards salaries, benefits, supplies, purchase services, tuition and insurance. Our operations and maintenance fund, this is where we get our salaries again, benefits, supplies, things like utilities and capital projects come out of this fund. Our debt service fund, which with the construction of schools earlier on this century, this millennium, we have quite a few different outstanding debts, but we are working on paying those down in a responsible manner. We also have our transportation fund, which covers, for the most part for us, since we have outsourced transportation, it's largely a purchase service through Durham Transportation. We have our Social Security and IMRF fund, where most of our retirement benefits come out of for non-certified staff. And then we have our tort fund, which is usually referred to for legal and, in our case, more insurance coverage for the district. Insurance for the district meaning risk management and things like that, not necessarily medical or dental or things along those lines. So for our district, 61.6% of all the revenue that the district gets comes from this vote. So it's an important vote, as you can imagine, but especially for operations, maintenance, debt service, retirement, and tort funds, all of the money that we get in those funds come from the levy.
John, is that typical for a school district in Illinois?
Absolutely. Without knowing how it compares to other states off the top of my head, Illinois is very local property tax dependent for its school districts compared to how other states fund education. And just to speak briefly towards that, I think the state has also recognized that. I think that's why we've had in recent years the change to evidence-based funding and other things to try to address how dependent local school districts are on the local property tax base compared to funding from the state. So for every levy, there's really kind of broken down, especially for Lake County, broken down into two general pieces. There's a debt service extension, which is used to cover all of our bonds and all of our outstanding debt obligations, and our operating levy. The debt service extension, these are all the things related to the bonds that we used for constructing schools back in 2000, 2001, 2002. This is actually calculated and extended by the county. They have access through our submissions to the county of what our debt repayment schedule is, what kind of payments we have to make, and then they levy accordingly. This specific part is not capped by PTEL, and I'll give you more information about what PTEL means in just a moment. The second piece is actually our operating levy, and this is what you would see mostly for school districts in terms of this is your salaries, your benefits, your supplies, everything that is the day-to-day operations of our district. This portion is capped by what's called the Property Tax Extension Limitation Law, or PTEL. You'll hear me refer to that a lot through the course of this presentation. And what is PTEL? PTEL limits the yearly increase in a district's levy by the lesser of 5% or the rate of inflation. And just to clarify, the rate of inflation, referred to as the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, is the percent increase in the cost of goods and services on a national level as surveyed by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. To kind of put that and flesh it out in real life terms, it means that the Bureau of Labor Statistics looks at what a gallon of milk cost in 2016 and what a gallon of milk cost in 2017, or a gallon of gas in your gas tank. And it's at, on average, about 2.1%. It's about 2.1% more in 2017 as compared to 2016. In the last 20 years, I know I've referenced it's usually tied to CPI or 5%, whichever is lesser. In our case, in the last 20 years, we've never seen a CPI over 5%, so it's almost exclusively always tied to CPI. And the idea behind PTEL, when it was first passed back in the early 90s, was the idea of providing a greater degree of stability for both the taxpayer and the school district. For taxpayers, it keeps their taxes from spiking when the property values increase in a large amount. And for a school district, it kind of keeps it from a dramatic drop in revenue if property values decrease at a rapid rate. So how is the whole tax rate calculated, or the limiting rate calculated? You would think it's just 2.1%. Unfortunately, as we know with government and laws, it's never that easy, right? So the limiting rate for a school district is usually the prior year's operating levy, so again, nothing related to the debt service extension, multiplied by increasing it by CPI, basically. And then that is divided by the current year's EAV minus new property. EAV stands for Equalized Assessed Value. That's the value of the property as assessed by the assessors. Say that 10 times fast. The top or the numerator of this is how much money the district can claim from existing property. So the idea being if we levied 20 million last year, we can only increase on current properties an increase of CPI from last year. That amount is then divided by that existing property, the EAV. So like I said, it's only getting that 2.1% increase year over year, or the CPI rate. Any new property is then taxed at that new limiting rate that's calculated. So that explains how a district's tax rate is virtually never the same as CPI. So when I say 2.1%, the levy is never going to be 2.1% just because as new property comes into the district, that gets taxed at that new limiting rate that everybody else has to pay. The process for the whole thing, I've given you in front of you a copy of it as well to make it a little bit easier to read, but it's actually kind of a complex and very drawn out process to do a tax levy. To walk through it really quickly, from a county and township perspective, the assessors assess in the spring and summer of 2018. They will then mail notices, handle appeals, etc., throughout the summer and fall and winter of 2018. While that's going on, from a county and township perspective, the school district at the same time is trying to pass a budget for the next year, and then in the fall trying to pass a levy. They then submit that levy, which will be at a vote for the next board meeting in December. We submit that at the end of December to the county. In the spring of 2019, that's when we receive a finalized levy from the county. So that's when the county finally says, this is what the actual assessed value is of all the properties in your district. This is how much new property you had based upon the laws and how everything's written. This is how much you're entitled to, and this is how much we can levy for you. It would be great if that happened before we had to pass a levy, because then we're not working off of estimates, but unfortunately the way it works, this is the way it's designed, so we have to work off of estimates in the meantime to write our levy. Once the levy is finalized in the spring, late spring, we send tax bills out to the residents. About 50% of it gets collected in May and June and distributed to the district and distributed to the different taxing bodies. And then finally, in the late summer of 2019, the remaining levy is collected and dispersed. Again, what's interesting is if you notice the lag time of this, we're starting looking at a budget in the spring of 2018. So in the fiscal year 18, we're looking at a budget. We're approving a levy in fiscal year 19, and we won't even see half of the money from the levy until fiscal year 20. So the whole process actually extends out over 3 fiscal years, which makes it a little bit of a challenge, but we love the challenge. So in light of that, let's talk a little bit about the data on the request. Just to give a little bit of the historical data of year over year, the levy as it's been increased from 2011 to 2012, 2012 to 2013, et cetera, is all in the 1.5 to, or even as low as 0.87 in 2014-15, all the way to 2.32 in the last couple of years. A lot of that has to do with the increase in CPI, and we've had a lot of new property come into the district in the last 2 or 3 years. So again, just to kind of do our calculations and our math, right? What kind of school district would we be if we didn't do math? Basic formula, we have our limiting tax rate calculated by the county clerk's office based on our EAV, our equalized assessed value, our new construction and CPI. So we take last year's capped extension, which last year was the $27,832,855. We take the CPI from the previous year, which is 2.1%. We take the estimated taxable EAV, which at this point the county is telling us they are anticipating our property our property values to be in the 707 million range. And then we take our new construction, which the county is assuming that we're going to have about $4.2 million in new construction coming onto our rolls this tax year. So when we do our whole calculation, we get down to our limiting tax rate, which is going to be 4.038205. Yes, it goes out that many spaces, limiting rate. And when you take that out to our capped extension, if we assume that the estimates are 100% accurate, which they never are, we would be looking at a total levy of $28.5 million. But we're not done. As we've said, these are estimates that we're working off of, right? They're not exact numbers that we get from the county. So there's a couple of issues that we deal with. One of them is property tax collection. No government body receives 100% of its tax levy for a variety of reasons. And we're also working off of estimates, as I said. If the estimate is off, the levy is off. And there's very long-term implications, such as lost revenue forever, if you don't capture those the funds in that current year. In the end, that results in us requesting a little more to make sure that we cover those variances. So again, just to refer back, our limiting rate was 4.038205%, which gives us an estimated capped extension of $28.5 million. Based upon the budget that we've passed, the needs and all of our legal requirements, we're going to be asking for a total levy of $29.1 million. So to kind of put that in perspective, we have our 2017 levy of $27.8 million. The request is going to be $21.1 million, or 4.876% increase. But we are really anticipating a 2.71% increase year over year. So again, to kind of talk through that a little bit more, last year we had an estimated existing property of $659 million. Fortunately, year over year, property values have increased to about $703 million. And that's, to be clear, existing property in the district. So these are homes that have been built and constructed, or properties or businesses that have been built and constructed in previous years and have been around for several years. The new construction, so in 2017 it was 1.3 million, in 2018 it was 4.2 million, estimated so far. That new construction is any new homes that were built, any new condominiums that were built, any new businesses that were built. So thankfully, when you have a property tax base like we have with increasing EAV and fairly substantial gains in new construction, that actually decreases our limiting tax rate. So we're looking at overall a decrease from 4.21 last year to a 4.03% this year, or a net decrease of 0.18%. That's basically how this all works. A couple other things I just wanted to highlight is, again, for existing properties, these percentages aren't really applicable. This is the idea of, this is from the perspective of a school district as opposed to a property taxpayer in our tax base. As I referenced in previous versions of the PTEL, we're really only allowed by law to increase it by 2.1% or CPI. So the idea being, again, that since a gallon of milk costs 2.1% more this year than it did last year, we're limited by that. The whole reason for asking for a slightly larger amount than what we are anticipating is if there are any new properties that come into the district that the county fails to capture in its initial estimate in October when we first asked for the estimates. And the idea being that as these new properties come onto our tax rolls, it's not fair to the existing taxpayers that they don't pay their fair share of the taxes. So The idea for asking for a little bit more is just making sure that in that estimate, in that variance, if there is any new property that come on that the county wasn't anticipating in October, we're still able to capture those revenue dollars and make sure that we're being equitable for all of our property taxpayers. Next steps. So again, one of the great parts about our district is we're very transparent in our tax levy process. For us, we have 2 hearings really, and by law, we're usually not even required to have that many, but we have 2 in an interest of being open and transparent. So this was just an informational hearing. Our next hearing will be in December 5th, and we will go into a little bit more of some of the financials that we've talked about tonight, and that will actually be the opportunity for the board to approve a levy for the 2018-2019 year. Is there any questions?
What time is the actual levy hearing?
I believe we have it set for 6:30, our
No,
normal
6.
board meeting.
6.
Oh, 6, excuse me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Board reports? If anyone has anything they want to share?
Well, on Monday, when we observed Armistice Day or Veterans Day, I couldn't be 2 places at once, so I did not attend the Frederick session, but I did the one at the high school. The high school had a breakfast. I don't know if you saw the video from Frederick, though. That was marvelous. You see Aaron Mulder up there directing. It's a good thing I wasn't there because the high school had a longer session. But if I'd have been there, I'd have probably said, "Hey, Mulder, hoorah!" Well, it's a good thing I didn't go. So, at any rate, at the high school, I mean, I got out of the Navy in 1967, and I know you weren't born yet, Jim, probably. But at any rate, at that time, I went to grad school. I went to grad school at Iowa. A little different attitude. That was when Kent State was out there and things like that. You have to look it up. But what we had at the high school is that we were given all kinds of respect, and they had an assembly at the very beginning. The band and the chorus played some numbers. Brad, what was his last name? The guy that just got elected. Schneider, yeah. Schneider gave a talk, and there was a motivational talk given by a retired CPO. But what really was neat about that was as we left to go down to the breakfast, the kids stayed in their places rather than going to their classes and stood up and applauded as we walked out. That was kind of neat. That was quite a contrast. So then we had breakfast and whatever. But at any rate, it was neat that what Frederick put on, and I have split between the 2, and it's crazy because I leave one early and I arrive late to the other. But and I think I totally support the fact that we have school that day, because if we didn't have school, we would have no observation from the kids. I mean, they'd be watching the tube all day or playing around or whatever. This way you could do something in the classrooms. And I also had my first classes with Science Olympiad that afternoon, and they asked me what I did, and I talked about hinge rooms on the destroyer and somehow tied that into electrical circuits and density. And they see me eat that up. So anyway, we're off and running with Science Olympiad, at least at GMS, and I don't know if Frederick started yet or not, but some good things are happening.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll have a short update on CEDAL. The last meeting I had with CEDAL was the week after our last board meeting, and they're actively pursuing solar power initiatives as well, and they're taking inspiration from our project. So they've been asking a lot of questions on how that's working. They've revised and improved their newsletter with information from CEDAL, and I'm hoping that we can get that shared district-wide or on our website. And I also had the honor of presenting a Student Star Award to one of our District 46 students who's transitioning back from CEDAL services back into the district. His name is Blake, and it was nice to be with his family at the ceremony and present him with an award for the good work that he's doing. So it's all in the newsletter, and it's just an honor to be part of that team.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Oh, well. Yeah, we're in the midst of a search for Ellen's replacement. We're at a point where we're looking at candidates now, and we'll have some interviews coming up not too far in the future. And we're still on track to have it wrapped up by the end of the year. No, we have 46, I think it is. 46 applicants. Pardon? Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. 46 applicants, and we've narrowed it down so far to 8, and then we'll narrow that down even further, obviously, so keep moving. Ellen?
We're required to report out the FOIA request, Freedom of Information request that we have every year, and we're a little behind. So this is covers December 2017 to October of 2018. I'm not going to read every piece of it, but I will read who it's from and what they were looking for. The Parents Foundation for Education in December of 2018 wanted an Excel spreadsheet containing the following information for every teacher and staff member currently employed in the Grays Lake. And they wanted your name, your position, address, personal email, hire date, years of experience, and current salary. So obviously there were some things that we couldn't give them, but we could, on our website, we already have salaries, but we were able to give them the information that was allowed. Daily Herald, James Fuller, on January 4th, wanted what drug prevention program our district uses, when did we start using it, what was the cost of administering the drug prevention program, and if you didn't have a drug prevention program, have you had one in the past? Then we had Advanced Disposal, and they wanted to request the last winning RFP documents, pricing, service agreements, and invoice for waste and recycling for all of CCSD. In January 22nd of 2018, the Illinois Retired Teachers Association requested the name and email addresses of all teachers or administrators who are retiring in 2018. On January 31st, 2018, the Prairie State Wire wanted copies of current collective bargaining agreements between District 46 and any organized labor collective bargaining unit. Smart Procure in February of 2018 wanted purchase order numbers for any items that were, and I still can't understand this one, so they said purchase order number, invoices, encumbrance or check numbers, line items, vendors numbers. So I think it was anything that we had to do with Smart Procure. NBC 5 Chicago does Grays Lake District 46 currently have any leases or agreements with telecommunications providers for cellular antenna and or towers installed by the provider of your school property? And if so, they wanted the current lease agreements, including the documents showing the location of the antenna and the amount paid to the school district each year by the telecommunications company. May 23rd, 2018, the Illinois Policy sought documents showing the most recent salary, total pay, employment status, and total compensation for all District 46 employees. Dean Froelich wanted electronic copies of all documents regarding For Sure Entertainment that are pertinent to the field day organized by Avon Center School during the last week in May 2018. Dean Froelich, June 7th, of the $750 paid to the For Sure Entertainment, they said it appears that the Avon Center School was responsible for $250 of the bill. What funding was used? Were taxpayer dollars used? Did the school board have to approve this expenditure? And was there a background check done on the entertainment prior to hiring them? Dean Froelich, June 12th, 2018, please provide the names of employees for Sure Entertainment that were permitted on school district property during the aforementioned celebration. John Bergwell wanted the RFP solicitation documents for Performance Services who did our solar project. Adam Fondell wanted the application and supporting materials for Mary Edley Allen, who's a teacher in our district. He also requested compensation and benefits for her and a personnel file which we are unable to give. Steve Smart wanted a copy of contract with performance services for the solar projects at our school district. Robert Joseph, in August of 2018, wanted all meeting minutes of the District 46 Diversity Committee. NBC 5 Chicago on August 7th wanted the record sufficient to show all cases where Grays Lake Community Consolidated School District paid a plaintiff by verdict, settlement, or satisfaction as a result of sexual misconduct or sex gender discrimination claim. And we have not had that. Smart Procure, again, wanted, these are all vendors. They're requesting that again, just like they did several months before. Steve Smart, a copy of certified payroll for all contractors that performed installation and construction on the guaranteed energy savings contract that was awarded to performance services. Michael Isparo, any and all records related to applications, requests, or inquiries regarding employment by Verna C. Wrench, including but not limited to job application questionnaires, correspondence, resumes, cover letters, letters of reference, whether in written or electronic format between October 2017 and the date of this request. Dean Frolick, September 24. I'm requesting electronic copies of documentation regarding business between Community Consolidated School District and For Sure Entertainment. Steve Smart, a copy of certified payroll for all contractors that performed installation and construction on the guaranteed energy savings contract that was awarded to performance services. Steve Smart, October 15th, asked the same thing again, certified payroll for Carson Solar Energy from August 1st, 2018 through August 24th, 2018 and September 16th, 2018 through September 30th. And then previous request for August certified payroll. Then he's requesting 4 other payroll. Gerald Parkinson, a copy of expense report for 2017 to 2018, Frederick and Grays Lake Middle School Science Olympiad program, how much money was taken in and how much money was spent, and also requested an itemized list of where the money was used. Dean Frolick, October 29th, would like to know if Community Consolidated School District has a random drug testing program, and if it does, documentation of it. So total personnel, time, and cost was about $609 for all of these requests. Distribution of our new Chromebooks is going to be January 14th and 15th. That will be at Frederick School. We'll give you the times and dates of that. For grades 3 to 8, we will have the names on each of the Chromebooks in alphabetical order, and they will be, there will first be a little presentation for parents letting them know what the expectations are and you know, how to take care of the Chromebook. And then they'll go into another room, and the multipurpose room at Frederick, and tables with alphabetical names on, and we'll get those. And then on the 16th, January 16th, it'll be at Park. There'll be 2 different times at Park. So Jim, we got it by January.
There you go.
Yes.
The Chromebooks, the kids keep those through their elementary years?
For 3 years.
3 years.
So 3rd grade, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. They
Right.
could get a new one in 6th, 7th, and 8th. And 8th graders
Okay.
This year, those will come down to 3rd grade.
Okay. But they don't, at the end of any sequence, keep it?
No.
No, okay.
So tonight, we honor you as school board members. And I bet you didn't know that serving on a school board has been described as one of the toughest volunteer jobs in America.
Wait, I don't get paid for this?
No.
It's in the mail.
So you still dedicate countless hours doing all that you do. And so we salute you tonight. We have some cake that we're going to take a little bit break for. And you provide vision and leadership for student achievement, for academic programs, for district fundings, facilities, and yes, the hiring of a superintendent. So let's take a little break and have a little cake.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you. Could I have the Evaluation Assessment Curriculum Committee report?
Yes. Okay, we met on November 8th, and the new business was, we got a good update on the kids' assessment program, which is tied into some of the things that we heard about tonight. The noteworthy thing that, for me was the technology purchase effect on testing. There will be a good thing for many reasons that we're getting these computers, not the least of which is we'll make testing a little bit easier than it had been in the past, and so that's great. We had a very positive report on October late start, and as you know, the teachers have an opportunity to evaluate their sessions and whether it's worthwhile. And the reports were quite solid and the comments were solid, and I really appreciate some of the professional comments such as, this is time we needed to review our teaching. It's great to get together with teachers from other buildings, and those are the kinds of things that were the main things there. So the October late start, and you've heard me say, my neighbors will say, well, what happens there? Well, we have a handle on what's happening there, and the teachers really need it and they appreciate it. We got a report on a standard-based report card for band, which was well done. I mean, let's face it, how do you give a report card? How do you give a kid a grade in band, and what does it mean? And there are some very professional ways that they could report to parents how a kid's doing on learning an instrument and playing. So that's the report on that committee, reminding everybody that December 5th, this professor will be here to talk to us about testing in general. By the way, we also got a report of some of our test scores from the park assessment. And so far, I've looked at the numbers, and it's interesting to me to split it by male and female and watch how the boys start off pretty good, and then they start trailing off as you go up. And I told Amanda, I said, I want to sit down and read what these tests really test. And I will do that sometime, probably next week. But I want to understand these tests better than I do right now, the ones we give here. Some good things are happening in that committee, and more good things will happen.
Thank you. Diversity?
Yes, we met last week. Spent a lot of time discussing holidays and how do we teach about holidays. And let's just take Thanksgiving. In the past, and probably we all have done that. You talk about some of the kids would dress up like pilgrims, some like Indians, and the focus was on that part instead of looking at what we're going to do now is looking at comparing and contrasting what kind of food you might have had during that time. What is it now? How is it prepared compared to how we do it now? Looking at national holidays and what do they mean. So we're trying to take the emphasis off of the way we typically think of Thanksgiving and Indians and pilgrims, and more about what actually we can compare and contrast rather than looking at that. So spent a lot of time talking about that. At our next meeting, we're going to have our Pride Committee from GMS going to meet with us just to have us find out what they do and get some input from them about how we can reach more kids and talk about diversity more. So those meetings go so quickly, and before you know it, they're over. So good stuff happening with that.
Thank you. Any questions?
I want to make another comment here. I've met with these kids for the first time with the Science Olympiad here in GMS. One of those sessions that the kids I've got in, there's 3 of them that are in geometry, all 3 of them. Which means I can get to the last 10 minutes or so, I can say, what'd you do in geometry today? And then stretch it out. And they just devour it. First, it starts off really well when you say, I was in an engine room on a destroyer, and I can relate what we did today to that. And then their eyes get big, and et cetera. But when you get to the point where they're in the geometry class, and they said, we're proving this, then I'll say, okay, here's how you might consider explaining this to a guy in the street who doesn't want to do a 2-column proof. And just ask them questions, and they take it and they run with it. And when I hear comments about what we're doing here, or maybe a comment about, I didn't have this when I was a kid, well, I didn't either. And I also didn't have electric windows in my car, and I didn't have a standard house that I bought to be air conditioned. You wouldn't consider buying a house without air conditioning today. Our schools are not going to be like they were 80 years ago, 50 years ago, or even 20 years ago, and they shouldn't be. You pick the good things out and you finance them and you move on from there. I had to say that. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
In your weekly update, you're going to get the history of Avon School that we found this week. And it talks about what teachers wore during there. And they had, the female teachers had 3 dresses. One they wore in the fall, one they wore in the winter, and one they wore in the spring. So I think things were a little different.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Well, you had to smell by the time you switched one out.
They're doing a lot of
one dress.
The end of the month might have made it.
Yeah, you know they were thick wool.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure.
The teacher's doing this all the time.
Alrighty then.
And we lost track, sir.
We did.
Sorry, it was my fault, actually.
Moving along, if I get a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, including the addendum to the personnel report.
So move.
Second.
Any questions? Alrighty.
Braden.
Aye.
LaCroy.
Aye.
Strack.
Aye.
Mesco.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Weedman.
Motion carries. We do not have any action items, nor do we have any unfinished business. So new business. First, comparison of activity and registration costs with other districts. We need to move.
Again? Seems like dueling screens and stuff this time.
Or turn the table around. Put us on
Ones that come down.
Or we could put it on that TV back there.
This one I read off.
I think it's cold in here. Jim's at the kids' table over there.
I said I was the lowest paid guy here.
You also started working.
Oh.
Had to be said. Somebody's a little good.
All right, so. Testing, there we go. We felt like you guys did not have enough presentations for the evening, so we threw together another one as well. A recent request was a little bit of an analysis on student fees comparing us to neighboring districts. So just to quickly recap the sources of where I got my information, there is a wonderful coordination of business managers throughout the central Lake County area that work together to do various surveys so that we can kind of coordinate and understand things like student registration fees. What are you charging and why are you charging it? How did you come to your conclusions? So I have access to that survey. We also did some informal surveying of some neighboring districts to kind of get our more immediate peers. And then for the more busy business managers who were unable to reply to me, fortunately they have their information on their district website. So I was able to spend some time, for lack of a better term, surfing the web. So the layout, as you'll see in the data in the following slides, the gray column is our current district. The yellow, in the light yellow, is data from our 5 closest districts, closest meaning geographically. Medium yellow is the average of their charges, if they had a charge. And then dark yellow is our numbers compared to their numbers. For blue, the light blue is the average of the 20 area school districts if they had a charge. And then the medium blue is our numbers compared to theirs. In the comparisons, just so that we all are on the same page, the negative or in parentheses numbers means that our district charges less money than what our peers charge. And if it's positive, that means we on average charge more. So I'm not going to go through this line by line, but obviously you guys have the information available to you. And if you would prefer this as an Excel file to run your own analysis, I'm more than happy to provide it. But I did want to just highlight a couple of things. First of all, for registration fees, we have preschool tuition, and to bring it back to that real quick, the reason why I highlight it is we have a pretty large tuition expense. By large, I don't mean, though, that we charge more than most other people. We have places like Big Hollow that actually have larger charges. Places like Woodland, Lake Villa, Millburn, and even Round Lake either don't have similar programs to what we have, or their pre-K programs are restricted more to special education. So our program opens up to regular education pupils, which is actually, and I'll let Heather correct me if I'm wrong on this, but one of the great parts about opening it up for local regular education pupils to mix with our special education pupils is it gives them that social aspect, and it doesn't have them completely housed and treated as something to be hidden away, right? It gives them that interaction with other peers, other neurotypical peers, that they have a chance to have a more normal reaction and more normal, this is what life is going to be like outside of the classroom as well. So I just wanted to highlight that as something, because I can see looking at that and going, wow, we have a $2,500 tuition charge, but Woodland only has $260. The idea being that's only really charged for our regular education peers, and it's great for the parents to have a relatively inexpensive option for pre-K, but it's also great for our kids that are special education kids to have a chance to, like I said, interact with regular education peers. So even though I wanted to include it, I didn't want to have things that you didn't see information on. I just didn't feel like it was completely fair to have an apples-to-apples, it isn't an apples-to-apples comparison. Other than that, if you look at our fees, for the most part, we're pretty on par with what everybody else is doing. I mean, $6 on the grand scheme of things isn't a big difference between us and some of our neighboring districts, either throughout Lake County or even just our closest 5 peers. Our miscellaneous fees, things like, sorry to jump back and forth, but things like our gym uniforms or replacement locks, replacement student IDs, graduation fees are again pretty typical for what you see for our peers in both throughout the county. You'll see different districts have different emphases on what they charge fees for. So Millburn might not have a gym uniform fee, but they have a band fee that we don't have. So it was just interesting to see how different fees came about in different areas and the charges that they came up with for those things. But overall, we are pretty typical for compared to our peers. Athletic activity fees, and I wanted to split this off separately. Our athletic activity fees, we do seem to be a little bit higher than some of our peers when we look at what they charge, both in terms of us compared to our most immediate neighboring districts and us compared to a majority of Lake County elementary school districts as well. So we do seem a little high. However, it also seems to be, I mean, some of the things as I thought through that was looking at the history of how these fees were created. These fees were established in 2004, so I'm sure that the finances of the district were in a much different place in 2004 than they are today. And I know that other places have done much more recent analyses of their athletic activity fees since then. So I just wanted to point that out as we look at some of those. Again, just being honest and being transparent, that's about what we are and how we compare to our neighboring districts. The other thing I also thought was somewhat interesting is our fees tend to vary depending upon the activity. And again, I don't unfortunately have access to why those decisions were made in 2004, but it does seem, and this is why I split it off from the non-athletic activities, it seemed like a lot of districts had a much more uniform policy in terms of what they were going to charge, either as a flat athletic fee or a one-time fee that they would charge students, like, well, you pay I think Millburn is $150 and you can participate in whatever sport you want to participate in, 1, 3, 5, whatever. Whereas some other districts were, like Big Hollow, it's $100 per sport, but it's $100 no matter what the sport is. Whereas we had much more individualized costs depending upon the activity.
I believe when we did that, it was, you know, obviously cross-country can go be a little bit less because of the number of students, whereas basketball has a limited number.
And things like, and I mean, it makes sense as well too, when you have basketball games, they require referees that cross-country doesn't always have, and they have much more events than a cross-country team would have. So overall, I understand it. I wanted to.
Marcus wanted to.
Yeah.
So we also have the amount of money that we put out for each sport, because in our contract also a basketball coach is paid at a higher rate than a cross-country coach, and it's also based on length of season, the amount of officials, the amount of workers that we would need, and that has been something that over the last 15 years we have looked at multiple times, and we have not raised our fees over that 15 years either. So when it all came down to, I think this is about the 4th time that I've been asked for all of this information during my tenure, and we continue to look at the ins and outs, and it has been a workable amount. It's never fun to charge that much money for things to make sure the kids can always do those, but there was a specific reason when this all started to be able to keep those activities, and yeah, that was a board decision long ago to make sure that we could run the activities at the middle school level that we needed to. But initially it was based on the amount of money that we paid coaches and the amount of money that we needed to pay sponsors and other workers that go along with the different sports that we offer.
I remember last time we looked, we were trying to make sure that athletics were always paying for themselves.
Right.
Or at least pretty close.
So there was a net neutral cost to the district, correct?
Are there any sort of waivers or scholarships available based on ability?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Great. So no one's out because they can't afford the fee. That's the idea.
Correct.
They may not be able to be in 4 or 5 sports.
Sure.
Right.
And I'll address some of that a little bit too in just a minute. A separate section for the fees is discussing technology fees. I know this is something that is a little bit more on our minds in light of recent purchases that we've made and recent obligations that we've had. This was actually a little bit more tricky to compare us. One-to-one programs are something that are slowly rolling out to different areas. So you'll notice actually even in terms of comparisons, it's not even the same 5 districts. I had to go pretty far to try to find other districts that have one-to-one programs and fees that they charge with those programs. One thing I do want to highlight as well is you'll see a difference in my slide with your slides, and that is because my colleague at Lincolnshire just alerted me to a change in their fee structure. They used to have a $25 fee, and a lot of their devices were built around a bring-your-own device. They have then gotten rid of, they've recently made the decision to move away from bring-your-own device and have all district devices, similar to what we are doing and rolling out in January. And that fee now, they removed a $25 technology fee and are just charging a $110 one-to-one fee.
Each year, right?
Each year, correct. And I just wanted to highlight that specifically because that's going to be different than what you see in your data. And then as I alluded to earlier, the non-athletic activity fees. This was a little bit trickier. I couldn't even find, this was one of the ones where it was interesting to try to get other districts to contribute information because not every district shares the same activities and the same events. So we have something called illuminations or a choral group, and not every district has a choral group. We have our musical. Some districts had musicals, some didn't, some charged, some didn't. So this was a little bit more of a challenging area to try to compare us to our peers. And again, you'll see they're not even all necessarily our most immediate geographically neighbors. So some interesting points about that. Again, I had to look a little bit further to find some other districts with one-to-one programs. It's harder to find the fees on non-athletic activities. Again, we do seem to be in the areas that we were comparable in terms of they had a fee and we had a fee and we had a similar program. We do seem to be a little bit higher than our peers. Several districts have made the decision to not charge fees as I reached out to them for some of these events. And again, just a reminder, this was something, now that I've heard, something we've reviewed, but overall these fees were initially established in the 2004 year. Some other thoughts I thought were worth bringing up. These are comparisons. I believe the initial request was comparing us to our peers and comparing where we are at with other peers. However, as I have communicated with other business managers, Some of them have started to move away from this. This used to be the bread and butter of every business manager. You compared yourself to your neighbor in terms of student fees, but a lot of boards seem to be moving in the direction of not comparing themselves with neighbors and focusing more on what's our philosophy of having this fee in the first place. And it was, to speak to what Marcus had said earlier, it sounds like we were ahead of the curve in the sense of a lot of them have talked about how do we make these things net neutral to the district. It's great that we have these activities, but they are not the main emphasis of what the district is trying to accomplish academically. So in light of that, how do we have fees that accurately reflect that we want to offer these things to our students, but not necessarily making it an additional large expenditure for the district to cover. So, yes?
You know, a follow-up to that, which would make this more meaningful, is that compare the stipends that we give the teachers that are with each activity. Because what I need to understand, let's just take Science Olympiad. The $225 there, does that go into the account that pays the stipend?
Yes.
For the people?
Yes.
It does, okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, that'd be an interesting thing to look at here. So.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you actually asked that because that was another thing that Ellen and I and the auditors have been working through, is making sure that our activity accounting in general more accurately reflects things like our revenues in and out. Yeah. If you look at something like for the middle school, you have soccer and basketball and all of these other events that are generally lumped into one account, and it makes it not undoable, not impossible, but it makes it more of a challenge to say, okay, this expense is specifically related to basketball, and this expense was specifically related to volleyball. So we're working through talking with our auditors on an athletic and non-athletic things like Science Olympiad, having accounts that are specifically set out to say, okay, this is the account that revenue comes in, this is the account that expenditures go out, and it would make reporting a much easier thing for the board to see, okay, for specifically a Science Olympiad at Frederick, I can look at this account and this would tell me this is how much revenue we got, this is how much we spent on it, and then when we have discussions about things like student fees, we can say, okay, it seems like overall we're collecting more revenue than we're putting out in expenditures, or actually we're putting out more in expenditures than we're collecting in revenue, and we need to discuss raising the fee.
That's not to say that each one should be self-supporting. As a board, we have to make decisions such as you do at the university level. The golf program, there's not going to be much revenue on that one. But football, yes. But some of the football money that we have, we're going to support the golf program.
And that's what we've been doing with track, especially covering the areas that haven't brought out enough money.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to express more that it's, Ellen and I are working on trying to clean up some of, not clean up, that implies that it's messy. Trying to make it as simplified in our accounting so that we can have better reporting for you, so that when you do have discussions about how we want to set these fees, we can give you a little bit more accurate and...
When you have Science Olympiad with just a bar, a hyphen or whatever it is, does that mean they don't offer it? Or they offer it but don't offer it, don't have a fee?
They don't have a fee.
Don't have a fee, wow, okay.
Yeah, so things like, I know specifically for Woodland, without going into how Chris Bobek feels about this, they don't charge fees for almost anything outside of the registration fee. So if you look at Woodlands, any of their activities, all of them are just $0. And
They should, Marcus?
So I think one aspect that you need to understand is over the last few years we have continued to climb our participation up to numbers that we haven't seen before as well. So one of the things I think is good for the board to understand is that although we do have a fee-based system, that does not seem to shy people away and have their kids participate. And to your question of how do we make sure that all can, we have payment plans, we work with them the best we can to make sure that their kids, because first and foremost, getting them to participate is the only care that we have. We'll work on everything else afterwards. So that is the first thing all parents hear from us if they call us with a concern about the fees. And we take a lot of time to make sure that that happens for the kids. So, you know, I said before, our fees have not raised over the 14 years, although our stipends back out and the amount that we pay for referees and the amount we pay for workers and everything else has continued to climb. So we're not into this for making money, and we don't make money on this. We do our best to try and stay as in and out equal as we can. And what has helped that over the years is an up participation and a continued growth in that area. So although we do have some of the higher fees, I'm sure, it has not shied people away from continuing to participate. So I think that's just one piece you need to understand with all of this big picture here.
Yeah, the Education Foundation will support $180 out of the $225 for Science Olympiad. Do any other service clubs pick up anything for, do they have any programs for the other ones where kids can't afford it?
We do not, but like I said, Tom, we end up working with parents,
Yeah.
whether that's a payment plan for what they can afford, or we work on them with, I have staff members who foot the bill for students. We have other parents that foot the bill for students, because you'll notice in emails out throughout the school year, especially at the end of the school year with like our graduation time and our graduation trip at the end. I'll always ask for parents if you want to help out others that are not able to pay for. And we have an overwhelming support with the number of extra payments that we have coming in. So we have a community that's very generous, we have a staff that's very generous, and we get every kid the opportunity of doing the things that they want to do as we go through.
On a related note, I know we're doing a community forum for the tech for the 101. So I'm curious, we haven't made a decision about a fee.
No.
And I'm sure it'll come up.
It won't be for this year. There will be no fee for this year.
Okay.
So we'll have a discussion around the board between now and the end of the school year.
So that's what you'll share with folks if they ask.
That there's no fee for this year. Yep.
And we've already received some questions related to that already and addressed those on an individual basis, but we're also obviously eager to to address that publicly as well. Any other questions related to the student fees? Thank you very much.
Just a note, I think the payment we pay at high school is $195 a year for the one-to-one technology. But at the end of that 4th year, that Chromebook will chop. Basically, you're paying for the Chromebook and the insurance at $195 a year. I don't think that's the intent here, so obviously the fee would be a lot lower based on your conversation with the high school.
And I know that's conversations that we've had with the technology committee, is some of the discussions about what do we do with the Chromebooks at the end of their life with the district, without looking at all the lease details. Sometimes you'll get a better deal on the Chromebooks if you give the Chromebooks back to the leasing company at the end. They obviously can then recoup some of the costs. But then another factor that we've talked about as well is because they're going to the high school and because they're going to be getting a new device from the high school, not that we've made a decision, but it doesn't make sense to send an 8th grader off with a device that they'll use for a summer and then get a brand new device come the fall. So those are all things that we're talking through and working through.
Thank you. Discussion of the ISB delegate for the conference. I'd be happy to do it again, unless somebody has a burning desire to be a delegate at the conference. Tag you're it?
Good, we need
It's
an
pretty exciting.
alternative, or not alternative. We need an alternate.
Oh, yeah, I guess we do, don't we?
Tag you're it.
Okay, well, if everyone's okay with that, then we'll just move ahead with that. And then next is a discussion of the IASB resolutions. I hope you've all had a chance to read the resolutions themselves. The first 3 are combined into resolution number 2, and that resolution is to support arming teachers in schools.
No.
For reasons passing understanding, the IASB supports this resolution.
No, it does not do that.
It doesn't?
It gives districts the opportunity to make their own decision.
Right.
That's
Well,
a different statement.
Districts already have that opportunity.
No, because you can't have guns on school property.
Well,
Correct, just say so.
Okay,
And
well,
then the first time I read it, I had the same reaction. Oh, there were cowboys in school.
okay, well, even so.
What they're saying is if you're in a remote, especially you're in a remote area, and the police station is at least 25 minutes away, the school board can come up with rules and regulations as to who would have access to concealed carry or whatever they want, They can set any restrictions they want, but there will be some people in the school who could have access to pistols or guns or whatever. That's, they're not saying they're going to. They're saying you in this remote district can set your own rules on this.
Okay, well.
That's different.
We have one district in far south Illinois who the superintendent has now gone through the training to be an officer.
Yeah.
So not only will she be the superintendent, but she is packing on a daily basis.
Well, and when Columbine came out, there was a teacher who was shot, and of course people didn't even know didn't know what to do in a case like Columbine. It was the first one. A teacher was shot and bled out because he was bleeding for 8 hours until finally somebody had kahunas enough to say, we're going in. So you've got to look at the reality of this. I've been through the real drills where we try to make them as believable as possible at Niles, and we had a little kitchenette in our office. We had a couple of department heads there. In that kitchenette, there was a butcher knife, and there was a screwdriver that has a blade on it about, well, I'd say 15 inches long. And as administrators, we would go out and look for kids in the drill to try to see a kid's face through the glass of the door. You're supposed to have the door shut, the lights off, no sound in a room, and you can't see anybody, so that the alleged perpetrator would think that's an empty room. So we would go up and down the hall and shoot the kids if they had their heads sticking out there, whatever. But I had these things in my sock, and my secretary would say, what are you doing? I said, when the real thing happens, I'm going to have more than a ballpoint pen. So I had a butcher knife in one sock, and I had a screwdriver in the other. Hey, this is real stuff, guys. You know, we sit here and read our papers, and we're scared.
And that's fine, but then those districts are free to lobby Springfield independently for the right to arm their staff. I have a hard time with a state organization supporting a resolution like this that encourages guns in schools.
I don't think it encourages. I just totally disagree with you on that.
I don't see how it doesn't. I mean, it
gives them the opportunity to do what they want to do.
Then they should take their independent initiative and lobby Springfield themselves.
Each individual school should do that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're 180 out on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a school in, small town southern Illinois should be forcing their views basically on schools in Chicago. I mean, it's
not what they're doing.
Well,
all I'm asking is when you read this thing, read what it says. It's not saying we're going to arm the teachers. That even reached the League of Women Voters in Lake Forest. They already put out a statement on it. They hadn't read the whole thing.
Well, so then what is the end goal of this resolution being adopted and the law being passed in Springfield?
If the end goal would give an individual school district the opportunity to say, until the police get here, we have recourse.
The end goal is a backdoor to arm teachers, is what it is.
No, it wouldn't be a teacher. And I probably wouldn't even, if I were a superintendent, I'd probably say, let's not have a teacher. And I would put the individual.
I would absolutely not ever support having that in this district for sure, personally.
Same here. No problem there.
So,
but that's not what we're arguing here. We're just saying, does this district can they make their own decision on this? Because you can't bring arms on school property now.
The purpose of a school district is to educate students and create good citizens. The purpose of local law enforcement is to enforce the law. If you want to have local control over emergency response to an active shooter situation in a school building, then you should support increased funding for your local police department so that they can staff to the level where they can keep an eye on the schools in that district. It should not be the job of the school district to provide that level of safety when they already have a job to teach the kids. They should not have a job also, or be encouraged by their school board or district. They should not have a job also to be armed police in a school.
There are at least 7 or 8 districts that have supported this thing. This didn't just start from nothing.
Well, no,
let me
and
finish,
they're all rural districts.
Steve, I listen to you. Let me talk. There are 7 or 8 school districts that say, we need this bill, we need the option. We can almost shout to our police department from here. They can't. They're, in some of those cases, they're a half an hour away. It's a different ballgame. And I'm saying let those people do what they think they need to do for the safety of their school.
I understand.
I should not be telling them they can't do that.
Then in my view, they should lobby on their own behalf then to get that law changed.
Well, it looks like that's basically what they're doing, is they're lobbying, they've already
Well, they
lobbied
want
the ISAB to then lobby into the state legislature to do it.
Right.
This is gonna shock a few people, I actually agree with Tom, is if they're in a rural school district and their police officers are 30 or 40 minutes away because they're covered by a county sheriff that's got 2 people on it and it's 50 miles wide, something happens and goes down in the school, they're sitting ducks. Now, up here, like you said, we're shouting distance from, or he said, we're shouting distance from the PD over here. And a 15 square mile district that they cover for police with 4 or 5 cops on it all the times, and there's cops at every corner, it seems like some days. There's a little different, there's a little different situation for them. Now, each school board then gets the option of lobbying or changing their rules inside of their district. This district may say, absolutely not. That's where I would be for this, is absolutely not. I don't want to see a gun, I don't like guns to begin with, so that is what it is. But down in a rural county, I could see the argument. I can see the legitimate need and the argument to protect the kids with somebody sitting in an office or an armed security guard or somebody to be able to protect the kids in the school. Yes, number one job is to educate them. You got to protect them too.
I understand. It's just
It's a difficult ask for a lot of people. But we got to remember where we live in this state. We live in the most populated corner of the state, anywhere from Will County up, is the most populated part of the state. There's a lot more resources up here. Down there isn't. And I'm one guy that doesn't like guns at all, period. But I can see the argument to let the school districts themselves make that decision. It would take, there's 7 of us on this board, it would take 4 people of that board to say yes in order for that to go forward.
And the first time I read that, I said, oh, good Lord, what are we doing now? And then I read it again and read it again. Then I said, well, they're recommending it from the ISAB. They must have a reason for doing it. And then finally I came around to where I am now on it.
That being said, still a board vote.
I'm just looking at the
Comments? Thoughts?
I guess I have 2, I haven't landed either way yet. One is yes, and this board probably wouldn't vote to do that, but then there might be some boards in populated areas that do, I mean, I don't know that that's our concern, but I don't know that necessarily it will just be those rural boards that decide to do it. I think we try to put that rationale in there, but not everybody's going to act in that rationale. I don't know if that's our concern or not, but it concerns me as a person. Sure. And I guess the second piece is, we're 10 white people talking about this, and we're not in any danger of being the good guy with the gun that doesn't get shot. And we just, had someone who was the good guy with the gun who was shot and killed, who wasn't white. And so I just would say, let's look around the room and think about the people who are having the conversation, and are we representing, all sides of that. So.
We also have armed officers at both high schools. So the threat is real, no matter where you're at.
Absolutely.
There are armed officers at the schools. And not just the 2 in this district. Over at Cedal, over on Gauges Lake Road, there's armed officers in both those spots over there too.
I myself can't get over the fact that this seems like a perversion that we're asking an association of school boards to lobby to have guns in the school.
Not doing that.
Does it, no, to allow it to happen, Tom. That's exactly what's being said.
That's
right?
different.
I don't think, they're not going in there and saying that they think that guns should be there. They want the local districts to be able to choose, right? It still seems perverse to me. Sympathetic to the idea that, you know, it just seems like there's a different route for this to take place than through lobbying from the Illinois Association of School Boards. It seems like not a far jump to me to think that someone who gets trained, an administrator or a teacher that gets trained, is going to ask for incremental pay to have this gun on them. Well, why not hire a resource officer? Why not have the lobbying come from the districts themselves? I agree with Stephen. I can't support this right now. That's where I'm at on it.
Oh, I'm going to agree with Stephen as well. I would not support a vote to adopt this either. I understand, like everybody here at the table, the needs of a rural community, but my concern is that the needs of small rural communities are going to ultimately influence the entire state. And I think those issues should be handled not necessarily at the rural school board level, but at rural municipal and rural government levels. Those are issues not only of school district safety, but rural community safety, resource distribution, and asset allocations that should be handled by local government and is not under the purview of the Illinois Association of School Boards. I think we all have the safety of students in mind, but I think it's a slippery slope to handle first responders and needs within a community that are beyond the scope of education. I would not support this adoption from this district.
I don't know where to go next, I guess.
Well, we could just take a vote.
Well, it's not something like a consensus, I guess. Is what
It's a consensus, whatever we
straw
come up
poll
with
you want
is
to
yes or
call
no.
it, yeah.
So-
Well, I mean, I think there's at least 3 against. I think you're for it, and Tom's for it. So Christie,
But when you get in that session, there'll be a lot of arguments that we haven't.
oh, there will be, yeah.
And so you,
And that, yeah, this one will go on for a while in that session. I mean, if you're still undecided, I mean, I can listen to the arguments in the session and make my decision then, and that's fine. But
that's what I'd recommend. Listen to what everybody else is saying, weigh it, and make your decision.
okay, and that's fine. Okay. Did anyone? The other ones were. Other resolutions are pretty non-controversial as far as I can recall. So unless someone has anything else they wanted to talk about, the charter school funding probably will get a little chatter at the meeting, I imagine.
Yeah, Mr. Bobek will be there on that one.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Jason?
Number 6, the new belief statement, local authority and safety practices. That I admit to not having read this, but is that at all related to the rationale for the adoption of the thing we've been talking about?
I read it, but more it was just what kind of practices you're going to have in your school.
Yeah.
The active shooter drills, that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more programs and things
Yeah.
that you provide along those lines. The amended belief statements are the changes, the things that you amended aren't anything substantial necessarily. And that was it for that stuff, so. Okay, then I'll take that under advisement, and then we'll see what happens in that session, and I'm sure it'll be a spirited discussion, so. Those two, the charter school one and that one are
Yeah,
gonna
that'll
be.
be.
Take a lunch with you.
Those, yeah, probably right. Yeah, so. Future agenda items.
Well, the next time we'll have our levy hearing and our levy vote.
That's right. Is that the only meeting in December too? Do we have one or two in January?
Two.
Just one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
And we'll know,
so.
January, we'll know who's
Right,
running
so.
for school board and stuff. So, yeah, okay.
Would you think that we would have it on, what's the date on the board meeting in January?
December 5th.
No, that would be January, January.
Oh, 14th.
Because are you going to be prepared to have a contract and name that person at the January meeting?
Potentially. I mean, so we have our final interviews on the 20th and 21st, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we would, we may not get one.
That's what I'm wondering, because you're not going to have a time unless you have a special closed session.
The 14th is
Yeah.
the meeting?
You'd have to have a,
You have a special meeting on the 13th.
Of January?
I'm sorry, it's
December.
November. Just the 16th in January.
so you'd have to have a special meeting, if you wanted to appoint that person in January,
We'd
you'd
have
have
to
a
have-
special meeting to discuss the.
Yeah, which we can do.
We can schedule that at any point.
Yeah. But if we do that, then, you know, make the offer, and of course, it's contingent upon them accepting.
Right.
So, you want to do that? Set a meeting for sometime the week of the 7th or whatever that is, after break.
So it's, your board meeting's the 16th, and we come back on January 7th.
The week of the 7th, if we could fit it in then that would give us time to contract and,
It'd be a special meeting, closed session.
yeah.
There's 1 week long enough to come up to a contract agreement.
It's going to be pushing it.
Have one written up, you mean?
It's not just written up, but in case there's negotiation back and forth.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we could just make it in February. I mean, we're not, as far as that.
I think we
part-
could probably at least start the process.
We can start the process that right after break, and then, and if it works out for the 16th, that's fine.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we would push it to February. So why don't we do that? So, any particular day, the week of the 7th, that anyone would like?
Monday or Tuesday would be better for me because I'm traveling.
Okay.
Probably starting Thursday, actually. I can do Wednesday too as well, but earlier in the week better.
Monday or Wednesday for me.
How about Monday the 7th?
The later in the week, the better for me.
So how about not Monday the 7th?
Wednesday sounds like it's the
Wednesday is.
Wednesday? Wednesday the 9th? Okay.
Does Thursday work for anybody? I always have a conflict on Wednesday, and I just have to play the game. All right.
So we'll schedule a special closed session meeting on January 9th.
Yeah. That'll work.
But if you make a decision at that last, the 21st.
I mean, it's
you
possible
can
we make
start-
that decision then, so then we can.
You can start the negotiation pieces
Yeah,
even before that night.
yeah. Well, and,
If the board's made a decision on, you know. what-
yeah, if we make a decision on the 21st, we may not have to have the meeting on the 9th, potentially, so. Okay.
Well, anyway, back to the future agenda items. Right now, we just have those two. But I'm sure there's something else will come up before then.
This isn't really necessarily a future agenda item, but I did want to have a small celebration to mention that Frederick was finally approved by ComEd for the interconnection agreement. We signed documents today. So hopefully in the next couple of days, Frederick will finally go live, even though it was our first field done for the solar project.
It's the last one,
It is
but-
the absolute dead last one to be approved by ComEd. So just wanted to mention, we now have everything approved from ComEd and things are moving along wonderfully. Solar project, just wanted to mention that in closing.
Excellent.
My only other thing I'd like to see us make sure we're on top of is any contracts
or service contracts or anything like that that might be coming due towards the end of the year that we can start looking at and making decisions on.
Okay.
You know, something that might be due at the end of the school year that,
Sure.
you know, be it curriculum or purchasing stuff for the one-to-one technology or whatever those cases may be, making sure that we're not behind the eight ball at the end.
Right. Sue's got that list, and Sue and Marlo, so we'll look at that.
If there's nothing further, I don't think we have any public comments. I don't think we need to. Oh, yeah.
In your booklets here.
Oh, yeah.
Is everybody going, by the way, is everybody going to the conference? Okay. An idea that we came up with a few years ago, I still think it's a good one, at least the sessions that you think are worth transmitting to other people. I'm not saying, maybe don't have to fill one out on everything, but I would suggest that something that really sticks as something that the rest of people should hear about. This format, I recommend, just fill the thing out and turn it into the superintendent's secretary, and then the rest of us can get the information on it. And I would suggest to do it as soon as possible after the talk, because otherwise it gets buried and then life goes on after that.
If there's nothing else, then if I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
LaCroy?
Aye.
Mesco?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Strack?
Aye.
Weedman? Braden? Aye.